This week on The Deep Dive, we're spotlighting a sector that touches every household, healthcare, and asking a vital question: what will it take to scale African health tech innovation for real system-wide impact? So as investment flows shift and regulatory landscapes evolve, the conversation is no longer just about inventing new tools, but about creating the right ecosystem for those tools to thrive, from financing and partnerships to policy and talent. So joining me, Oluwaseun Afuye. He's a senior consultant at Salient Advisory, where he leads cutting-edge analysis on health tech regulations across Africa. So how do we move from promising pilot projects to continent-wide transformation? Let's find out. Oluwaseun, good morning to you. Great to have you on the show.
Good morning.
So yeah, I mean, look, there's a lot to talk about here, but let's first start with you over at Salient and how you guys are trying to get more innovation in the health tech sector and get more funding in there on the continent.
Awesome. Thanks for that question. So beginning just before COVID happened, and COVID then accelerated it, what we began to see was that we saw health tech innovations beginning to step up to address gaps that were in the supply chain in Africa and for health products. And so over the past 5-6 years, we've seen more than 1,000 of those companies accelerate forward, and their goals oftentimes are to enhance the availability, accessibility, affordability, visibility of products as they move throughout the chain, and most importantly, the quality of health products that are getting to patients at the right time, at the right place. So these companies are advancing, but overall, the climate in Africa can be challenging.
Right.
So they require some support. And then what we try to do is we try to step in the gap, provide them some hands-on support, connecting them to large healthcare buyers, which are donors, government agencies, as well as large pharmaceutical manufacturers, industry, trying to help them facilitate these deals, but also helping them navigate the relatively complex waters of providing healthcare products and services to patients in Africa. So
fantastic. When you're making that link, what are the donors, the potential pools of capital and so on and so forth? What are they looking for when you bring these companies to them? What do they want? Do they want to see cutting edge stuff? Do they want to make sure that there's longevity there? As far as due diligence, I'm guessing you do some of the due diligence, but what are they looking for?
I think most importantly, what large health purchasers, which is what we call them, all these players, including government, want to see solutions that can provide access to healthcare for populations at scale. So, for example, we have a company, a Nigerian company, called Figure, that has done work with NPHCDA beginning in 2020 when they help NPHCDA track vaccines, COVID vaccines, moving around the country. So imagine NPHCDA trying to vaccinate hundreds of millions of Nigerians for COVID, and needing to be able to pinpoint where each vaccine is throughout the supply chain, what the conditions of those vaccines are throughout the supply chains. That's challenging, looking at the fact that we don't have cold logistics solutions in Nigeria, not a lot of them.
Right.
So then steps in a company like Figure with their own solution that can help NPHCD tell the real stakeholders where these products are, what the conditions of these products are, so that the government can make snap decisions. That's essentially what we're doing. So fundamentally, agencies, governments, donors, whoever, they want to see solutions that can enhance access at scale, but are also sustainable, which means it's not just a niche solution. They want solutions that you can translate across geographies, across different subsegments of the healthcare space, essentially.
Are you guys primarily focused on Nigeria or across the continent?
Across the continent.
Okay, great. So who's at the forefront? I'll get to the money side of it, but as far as the innovation that you are seeing, where are the most exciting things coming from as far as health tech is concerned?
So essentially, you have the large names. So you have telemedicine, for example. Telemedicine is a hot topic across the continent. Yeah, regulatory issues, regulatory concerns, not issues, but that's happening. But you also have innovators who are providing what we call order and inventory management, essentially helping governments, pharmacies, whoever it is, track their inventory so that they can be able to provide the right products at the right time without accelerating spoilage, which we know is a big concern. But we also have what we call the online pharmacies, which are essentially e-commerce. Let me not call them e-commerce business, because sometimes they are paired up with telemedicine solutions, but they help patients go online, and whether it's USSD, whether it's WhatsApp solution, whether it's a web-based solution or an app, you are able as a patient in Africa to then make an order for certain products and have that delivered to you. So we have some other categories, for example, like visibility, and then there's some interesting companies who are helping track the quality of products, so helping authenticate those products and make sure that the products getting to patients are good quality.
Fantastic. I love telemedicine. I think anything that can cut the need to have to travel all the way to a hospital and you can just, see a medical professional via your mobile device is fantastic. But for that field, there's, in Nigeria, when somebody says network, it's a pejorative. It's a negative, because network is when you can't, network comes up when you can't transfer money or there's an issue. So that, of course, is going to rely on the telecommunications network, I guess, infrastructure. So does that conversation come up when the telemedicine discussions are being had?
So we have many companies trying different models. Many times what they're trying to do is scale back. So rather than try to put forward, coming back to the fundamental issue, which is not majority now, a certain segment of African population does not have access to 4G internet, for example. Right. So you cannot provide healthcare to them leveraging 4G internet. So we have solutions that then do USSD. Rather than you going online and having face-to-face with the doctor, it could be real time or it could be asynchronous. The doctor responds in his time, but you can chat. You can do USSD to ask questions and get counseling. There are 2G-based solutions. So there's a variety of approaches that companies are taking to solve this, but that's the problem. Infrastructural challenges remain, and health tech innovators may not always be able to solve those infrastructural challenges. They are fundamental. But what they're doing is navigating around the challenges in order to provide the actual need, answer the actual need that the patients have. Okay. And they're doing it across Africa.
Great stuff. On the manufacturing side, are you seeing? Well, so here's one of the challenges, right? It's the fact that if you look at Nigeria, for example, we are import dependent, and we're always, having to bring in medicines and so on and so forth into the country. Our manufacturing sector, it spans. I mean, we had. General Christopher Musa, Chief of Defense Staff, 2023, where he was talking about how we spend so much US dollars importing weapons from around the world. Our manufacturing base is not enough to make our own weapons. So how much of that presents a challenge for healthcare, the manufacturers you're seeing in terms of innovations, when the base nations on the continent can't make those things themselves?
So I think that's a great question, and that's a question whose the answer to that will span beyond just health tech innovations. Gotcha. But we, for example, in Nigeria, speaking to Nigeria, we have the presidential initiative on value chain access in Nigeria, the PVAC. I hope I got the acronym right. And there's the whole drive from the presidency, right, with executive backend to facilitate manufacturing, domestic manufacturing, right, because local has a negative connotation. Of course. Domestic manufacturing of these products on the continent. So there's some knowledge sharing with foreign organizations with regards to active pharmaceutical ingredients and the likes. But what we also see health tech innovators doing, yes, there's some health tech innovators, fewer in Nigeria than, at least from my experience, that are going into manufacturing equipment, manufacturing consumables. Some are, but many are also helping local manufacturers extend their scale. So if you speak to most online pharmacies, they tell you they only carry NAFDAC certified products, which means, first of all, you take away all the imported products that are not approved by the regulatory agency. But then there's the place where you're also putting forward the products that are being promoted from within, and getting those products to the places where they are needed when they are needed. But you also have these innovators helping manufacturers ensure that there is no counterfeiting of their products along the supply chain. So, for example, there's this organization called Check It. And essentially what they do is that they have stickers on the packs of medications, products, healthcare products essentially. And those products can be authenticated both by the pharmacies or the distributors at the terminal point of sale or by the patients when the patient buys. So Healthtech innovation is also supporting the manufacturing drive, but because it's a much broader scale of support that is needed for local manufacturing to thrive, there's the government angle to it as well, and the government is making some effort.
Okay, well, let's jump on that point, mentioning NAFDAC, regulators, and so on. How do you see the relationship between regulators and innovators? Are they erecting barriers? Are they stifling innovation? Are they able to keep up? A lot when we talk about AI and technology, a lot, we always talk about how regulation is behind innovation. So how are you seeing that dynamic working out?
That's a very interesting question, because for the greater part of the last 18 to 24 months, I've worked on something called the Regulatory Learning Group for Online Pharmacy in Africa, which essentially is a group of 13 African countries. Nigeria is part of it, Ghana is part of it, Kenya is part of it. And what we have been deliberating on, discussing on, is how we can advance, or enable, rather, that's a better word, enable access to health products, leveraging online pharmacies, essentially looking at how you can develop enabling regulation in these countries. And the reason why I use that as a base point for my answer is that at the start of the process, maybe in 2022, when we first started those conversations, regulatory appetite was very low, because regulators always have to balance the risk of advancement with the potential benefits of advancement. For the Healthtech innovation, I'm just looking to solve a problem.
Right.
But the regulator has to counterbalance that. So there was a lot of the appetite was minimal, but over the past 4 years, what we've seen is that regulators have gotten on board. Many are excited. Some still don't know how to engage, but are willing to learn. For example, in Ghana has what is called a National Electronic Pharmacy Platform, which is government-run online pharmacy platform for all pharmacies in the country. And the goal is that every single pharmacy in the country will be part of that platform, and through that platform will be able to sell health products to patients online. Nigeria is not there yet, even though Nigeria is also exploring that option, but Nigeria has also, over the past couple of years, developed very robust online pharmacy regulation, and are constantly revising that because they are engaging with innovators, seeing where there are sticky areas, where there are gray areas, and constantly revising that. And in fact, Nigeria has even gone to embed that online pharmacy regulation into law. So the Pharmacy Act of 2022 has online pharmacies embedded into it. So I guess the point I'm trying to make is that regulators are mindful of risk, and so they will always be slow to adapt. Mostly be slow to adapt. But because they also see the benefits, they see the challenges, the more they interact with innovators, the greater their appreciation for what these innovators can do, and so they become partners in working towards that goal.
This idea of a central platform where all players can come together and operate. There's, I've noticed that with a lot of solutions being put forward, particularly for Nigeria, everyone's working in silos, right? And so, how do you, because somebody can pop up and want to do this, another one has an idea. So, and there's so many of them. Is it real? And every time this conversation comes up, we say, well, too many silos. Everybody come together. It's harder than it sounds to get so many. Right. So how are you seeing that playing out? So
it's difficult. Speak to any innovator working in health records, supply chain information management systems, they'll tell you it's incredibly difficult. And it's not just from the innovator end of things. Yes, most innovators are using different types of platform, sometimes different languages, different acronyms, etc., to communicate, but also across, government systems. In Nigeria, for example, we don't have, at least to the best of my knowledge, a unified system for health records, a unified system for information management in healthcare, medical information management. But because these are concerns that everybody recognizes, there is work ongoing. So interoperability would always be an issue where you don't have unified architecture in the country. But conversations are ongoing about, for example, there's the NHLMIS I'm not going to try to remember
No problem.
right now. But essentially, and that's what they're doing some work with an innovator, but trying to centralize some of the medical information that we need, trying to come up with standards. And this even goes beyond Africa, because I've had conversations with colleagues from across Africa and also outside Africa. And this is always going to be ongoing, trying to ensure that there is integration and interoperability across systems, across platforms. But yes, it's a challenge. Also, again, government recognizes the challenge, and to a large extent, government is supportive, government is forward-thinking and trying to solve these challenges despite their own resource constraints. Innovators are probably bearing the brunt of the challenge, and many times what you have innovators do is that when they go into work with specific systems, they then have to configure modules of their own system to be able to speak to those systems. So that usually is a project on its own. And you have many, in the northern part of Nigeria, you have the Bolt Foundation run by a startup called Life Bank. They're working with several drug management agencies, Yobe State, Kaduna State. They have to do that to make sure that they can actually serve the government well. But also, government is trying to centralize that so that we have common language, common standards, a unified architecture.
Fantastic. Now, let's talk money now. I still want to stick on the healthcare, but I know we have to talk about the money side. As far as the funding rounds and the amount of funds coming in, is Nigeria leading in that department? Or maybe I shouldn't be, maybe comparing countries. Let me stick to the amount of money coming in. Are you encouraged? Have you seen a dip since COVID? As the funding rounds getting larger? How are you seeing the fund flows, the capital coming in on this?
I think the funding in health tech mirrors the general funding landscape in tech, not just in Africa, globally. So prior to COVID, tech generally was a hot topic for most VCP investors, and a lot of money flowed, right? Post-COVID, post the interest-free regime, we saw a lot of money coming into health tech because the promise of health tech innovators became apparent. But as you know, globally, things are changing. Funding is declining globally. So over the past 2 years, what we have seen is that funding to tech, not just health tech specifically, has declined by almost 50%. And this is commercial funding. Also, when you look at donor funding, it's declining as well, especially since the US government's stop work order on USAID. So the expectation is that this will decline, but startups and innovators, not just startups, because many of them are no longer startups, health tech innovators now have an opportunity to go beyond raising commercial investments to partnering for market access with large organizations who are willing to do business with you, such that rather than be funded by just donor funding or investment funding, you are now being funded by revenues generated by the commercial business that you're doing.
Gotcha.
So there's still some money coming in, that's declining. General consensus is that most likely will stay that way. But there is the opportunity to do business, make money from actually serving the communities that you serve at a larger scale. And many international organizations, many manufacturers, pharmaceutical manufacturers, for example, on I3 we have MSD, Merck, as a sponsor. We have Cencora, which is, I think, a Fortune 10 company, one of the largest pharmaceutical organizations in the world, willing to partner with innovators, as long as these innovators can demonstrate capacity to scale access effectively.
Okay, so, gosh, so many questions popping up here. Okay, on the funding side, I want to get to what they're asking from innovators to demonstrate this capacity. There's the talk that, this USAID stop funding reduction should empower us to fund ourselves. There's been, people say in Nigeria, well, we've got billionaires, they can do it. Is that a fantasy when we say that we don't really need as much of this foreign funding and we should be able to fund ourselves? So what you're saying, is that a possibility?
So while I would say that, we're still getting some clarity about the impact of the US government stance on USAID, temporary or permanent, whichever it is.
Right.
I would also say, looking at Nigeria specifically, when you look at the numbers, development funding for healthcare contributes less than 15%. Objectively speaking. So it's important money because that money typically goes to ensuring that people can get vaccines, ensuring vulnerable populations that government spending is not catering to can get healthcare. right? But I think that beyond development funding for health, there is also a large untapped potential for creating the markets on the continent. That's how I'll describe it. Whereby, yes, government funding is low. Government is resource constrained. Right. Government doesn't have enough money to fund healthcare as they should. Development funding may or may not dry up, but even within the continent, for example, insurance penetration is extremely low.
Right.
Increase insurance penetration, you solve some problems because now people can actually go to access healthcare without being overwhelmed. Overburdened is the right technical word, right? By the cost of healthcare. So I think, yes, and it's not necessarily looking to certain segments or groups of people to fund healthcare because commercial investors, they will require returns, right? Social investors may fund healthcare for social impact.
Right.
Commercial investors would require returns, but the more you demonstrate that that market is being created, that market is evolving, that market is getting established, and that market can be profitable for commercial investors, the more they will invest. Whereas social investors will continue to invest as long as you demonstrate access and you demonstrate social impact, right? So yes, there is scope for all of that to happen. We don't need to, I don't even think we do depend wholly on development funding for health.
Great stuff. I will be remiss if I don't ask you about AI and its impact on what you're seeing in healthcare. Are we there yet? Because there's some, companies overseas that are doing this. How are you seeing that, in terms of what impact it could have on?
It's a hot topic.
Yeah.
It's a very hot topic. But I would say the way we would describe it is that it's nascent.
Okay.
So yes, some companies, some innovators are leveraging AI to do various things, to take off the first level of efforts when engaging with patients, for example, to some are using it in data analytics to predict epidemics, to predict pandemics, and to help government take those decisions. Some are using it for inventory management, etc. But even AI as a topic globally is still emerging.
Yeah.
So we are yet to see, we can begin to see potential impact, potential areas for impact, but we are yet to see anybody do it at scale, health tech wise.
Yeah.
There are people doing it, and then you have organizations like Cursor Foundry, which is an AI company, not African, that is partnering with a lot of innovators on the continent to leverage AI for health impact, but it's nascent, and we may not be able to see actual impact for another couple of years. All
right, you mentioned the word scale for AI, but just coming back to, innovators and these ideas they're putting forward, there's always the question of scale, particularly in Nigeria, with such a large population, rural, urban. So how do you see that scaling dynamic in terms of how to get these things, these ideas and innovators to impact as many people as possible?
I'll tell you that innovators are in places in Nigeria that you don't know, places that you may not have been to. I just mentioned that both foundations run by Life Bank is in Yobe State, and certain places of Yobe States where the government was struggling to distribute products.
Wow.
So innovators are already there. Now they may need some support from government, because they need to partner with government to do those initiatives. They may need some support from international partners. They may need some support from investors, some support from ecosystem partners like us in I3, whereby we are trying to make those connections between what innovators are doing and what healthcare organizations need to get done in the market. But I'd say innovators are already there. Innovators are distributing across 36 states in Nigeria, distributing to rural areas. I mean, in the I3 cohort, for the past 2 years, 2022, 2023, I think almost, if I remember correctly, 42% of geographies that innovators served were rural. So it means that they already are in those places. And then you also have the UAVs like Zipline, Wingcopter, who are using drones to get products to places where government is struggling to reach. So innovators are already primed for scale. What they need are partnerships for that scale. So they need to work with Figo, for example, as always since inception, distributed products, tracked products, but needed to partner with NPHCDA. NPHCDA needs to distribute hundreds of millions of products, vaccines, every year. Figo partnering with NPHCDA means that Figo now has tracked over 100 million vaccines for the Nigerian government. Figo cannot track 100 million vaccines by itself because vaccines are mostly controlled by the government. So what they need next is partnerships for the scale.
Fantastic stuff. Great conversation. Oluwaseun Afuye, Senior Consultant at Salient Advisory. Thanks so much for your time here on
You're
Business
welcome.
Week.
It's my pleasure. Thank you.
Well, that's all we have time for on Business Week. I'm Rotu Sodiri. Let's continue the conversation on X. Do have a lovely rest of the weekend. Take care.